Let me know when you can
Are
hear
you
me
perfect?
and
You're
see.
here.
Super.
How are you doing? It's been a while.
It's been a while. How are you doing?
All well, all well. Progressing step
Super.
by step.
Super. Super. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Curious about what you wanted to chat about.
So this is more on the real world applications and the current flow of AI and whatnot. We call it AI Jam.
Yep. Yep.
And we renamed our channel from On Air to AI Remix.
Cool. Super. So yeah, so today I guess we're going to be talking about how AI applies to real world use cases and some interesting use cases out there. Super.
Not
Super.
only that, we'll also speak about what new tools are coming up for people who haven't learned how to code, but understand how to draw flows and flowcharts,
Right.
and
right.
how they can get into programming and use no-code, low-code frameworks, which are getting developed all over the world.
Super. Super.
Start of the pandemic, and we are a
Right.
COVID podcast essentially, right? Like we were born in COVID times.
Right.
And that also focuses on the good side of where the diversity we had in the first season from across the globe, I wouldn't have ever gotten unless it was digital world.
Right. Right.
Or internet or the connectivity we have today, right? Like
Exactly.
Legit, I to started the podcast sitting in a village.
Yep.
You remember
Yep. I've seen the same thing. And I've kind of seen two sides of it, though, where over the last 2 years, I've been doing a lot of webcasts, and I've had, I'd say, varying degrees of success on it. One is, of course, everyone is now engaged on digital. Digital, for a period when the pandemic was at its peak, digital was the only option. And a lot of times, I would be traveling around the world to have a 30-minute meeting somewhere with a customer.
That thing is bridged.
Unheard of. Yeah, exactly. It's unheard of. For a quick 30-minute meeting, for an hour meeting, the justification for getting on a plane and going halfway around the world doesn't make sense anymore, because everyone's gotten used to digital.
And not just that is also fueled a next part of it, like where
right.
people traveled only for those half an hour, 1 hour meetings. Now
right.
they end up traveling to spend hours of work time with people, then
right,
just
exactly.
going for half an hour of a meeting. Like now the travel plans are like going there, working for a week, a day, or whatever it is,
Exactly.
But more like we're getting more out of that same travel or journey every time.
Exactly. It's kind of interesting changes, interesting times as well. And so the mixed reaction that I was talking about for webinars has been, one, people are used to it, and as a result, almost everything people want to engage with is digital. But at the same time, there is a level of fatigue associated with digital and webinars, and as a result, the audience started dropping down over time. So the last 2 years when I was doing webinars, initially I saw an audience. Yeah, it was in the hundreds, literally, and getting 500 people joining your session was not unheard of, and it started dropping drastically down to 20, 50, even less. So it is a 10x drop, and this is because one of the reasons anyway is the fatigue, where throughout the day you're just going from one digital session to another and another, and at some point you're prioritizing.
Looking at that screen becomes a pain. Like just having a Zoom meeting as a UI to look at is
Exactly.
a pain all the time, because we are daily in meetings with other people on that same
Exactly.
UI, and then look at something which is not a meeting
Yeah.
also in that UI becomes a pain.
Yeah. So anything you can eliminate from your schedule, you will eliminate. And that's, the result of the fatigue, where you're kind of going, well, unless it is an essential that I have to attend online, one more in squeezing it
That's
in
true.
between my meetings, I'm not going to do it. And so we started seeing that drop happen.
And that gave an uptick in the audio
mhm,
podcast section of Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google
right.
Podcasts, like
Yep.
where
Yep.
the same
Mhm,
content got more
mhm,
reply from people on the audio
right.
part of it, where
Right.
they're just doing work in their working hours. They have it on the speaker in the background. That's nice.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, on the flip side, because of the pandemic, I've not been using public transportation very much. I've not been traveling on holidays very much. So there's been, I would say, a lot more road trips than anything. So being on the road for hours is becoming sort of a norm. And as a result, for me, the consumption of podcasts has increased. And
Traveling has
working
gotten a
out.
different meaning now.
Yeah, exactly. Staycations and road trips. And of course, I've stopped going to the gym during the pandemic, and, I started going out for either hikes or runs. And those were, again, opportunities for, audio content. So that's
And
been
so
interesting.
this is what we are going to do. Like, I've been procrastinating about this part, but I know this is necessary. All
Right.
the video podcasts, we'll have them as a audio just
Yep.
on Spotify or something, where it can become like we can reach out to people
Yep.
who actually prefer audio podcasts more.
Exactly. I mean, you can put it on iTunes and YouTube and Spotify and all of that, and then have choice where no matter what channel people are on, they can look at
And
it. Yeah.
that would, like, now that I think of it, it would be a very good marketing methodology even for the website, just our website, because now we are
Right.
coming up with, there's one more product in prototyping we have. I'm literally spoiling it or teasing it on this podcast for the very first time.
Right.
So the first product last year was pikkc. That was a data set camera, essentially, right? So with that, on a parallel, we are building two products out. One of them I'm going to tease because it has got something to do with how you and me both support no code, low code programming.
Yeah.
That's why. So we are building a product called Flowpix. Flowpix.
Right.
So like I have learned programming where my teacher has taught me to make a flowchart in a notebook, derive that logic, solidify it on the notebook with flowcharts, write code there in the notebook, figure out what fits, and then write a script on the compiler. I'm not from that generation who's used to copying code or pulling GitHub requests and patching the code together to build software.
Right.
So my understanding of how I had learned programming is very basic. Keeping that in mind, a lot of that's how most of the people have learned programming, right? Like the good programmers have learned that logic is more important than the script we write.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that becomes easier when the foundational interface is easy to use.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So Flowpix is a product where you just draw flowcharts for every flow, be it user interface flow for the front end or the data structure flow for the back end. You take a picture with pikkc.
Right.
You build a data set on Google Drive, or for this, we would have our own servers where we process it end to end and help our users with data, because pikkc did not require that because of the nature of the design. But here we might have to. So we might have a different channel there where you take a picture of the flowchart you've drawn on your screen, And on the back end, we are trying to kind of spike OpenAI GPT-3 with GitHub Copilot and OpenAI Codex. In a way, you know, which would
I was actually going to say Copilot, and yeah, you just said that, which is Copilot is one aspect of it, and you're most likely using that to say, you know, instead of prompting code, you're kind of saying, you know, here is a flow chart, and then in the back end using Copilot to figure out what code fits there.
Because that is the problem, right? Like Copilot helps people who have written whole scripts. They know how to start that script, and after that Copilot helps with the prediction we have like on our keyboards for what to type next. It would help with the code what we need. That is the USP of Copilot, right? So that can be utilized well in FlowPix because the flows would be predefined.
Right. That is super interesting. And also, you know, the other possible alignment could be, you know, I don't know if you've seen the new capabilities in Power Platform, Power Apps in particular.
Yes.
Where you can take a picture of a form. So you can actually draw your form out and say, here are the fields and buttons you want to have. And once you draw it, you take a picture and it'll convert it to a digital form.
Essentially, so like that's how we're gonna actually stitch it out together. Like now we've I don't know if you know this or no, or if it is still like I don't know if it has slipped your mind or no, but we are also part of Microsoft for Startups Founders Hub now. Pikk as a startup, we have gotten into the Founders Hub.
Super.
So we have gotten all these access to all the power tools, you know. So it's going to be fun stitching all of this up on Power Platform only.
Exactly. And you know, I tried out Lobe again after quite a while, and I noticed that Lobe, when you train your model and publish it out, it does have an option to publish it out to Power Platform, and which is kind of cool.
And it is awesome. That is the most basic way to do machine learning today on pictures. You download pikkc on your Android phone, you make a data set using it, download it to Lobe, and then just process it out to a Power Platform. See, and you can do machine learning, no code, low code.
Exactly. Yeah, it's getting, the landscape is getting interesting from, you know, the productivity perspective, where, you know, if you have a vision of what you want to do, in the past, you'd kind of be stuck because you're trying to figure out, you know, what is the resources available? I need to have data scientists. I need to have developers to even get a prototype out. And to get that prototype out very quickly, it is interesting. And from a startup perspective, that's a great way for a startup founder with limited resources to say, you know, here's my vision. And instead of having it just as a, you know, a Figma diagram, they can kind of go to build a prototype, and that's really interesting.
And that is going to actually change the landscape altogether, because most of the startups today, I don't like to say this like it is sometimes talking about the bad aspects of the industry you are in. Is kind of not good, because you should not be cribbing about what state we are in as founders. But I have to crib about this, because what happens is a lot of venture capital also gets allocated on these Figma designs. And the startup gets crapped out at Figma designs only. So like even I've come across other founders who are, we've been lucky that we found a path where we could bootstrap our way in and kind of build a company around it. Not everyone gets to do that, depending on the nature of the company they're trying to build, right?
Exactly.
In that cases, the good products actually don't get capital in the very initial stages where it is necessary, because they don't have time to build that Figma presentation to raise that capital. But they're building the product out.
So yeah, it is, I agree, it is getting really interesting from, you know, the tool set available. in terms of saying, I want to build something out, a working prototype, and I want to build it now before I can get developer resources, data science resources, and all of that. It is possible to prototype your vision very quickly.
And that is the best part today. In a way, what happens is, see, most of the money which is required for at scale AI companies or complex software companies, because of the way everyone has learned programming, is through utilizing cloud tokens very well. Right? Like the entire systems are built to keep the on-device system light on cloud, just so that the tokens are utilized quickly and we can get the service we need. So in that ends up being a very huge expense for a founder.
Right, exactly.
But to get to that expense, also we need to have a working prototype for which we don't need that money. And that has kind of become very, how do I say this? That initial trial period for the cloud resources to build a prototype out and get to a user base till where you actually require a huge chunk in the billing of your cloud.
Right.
To get to that point, it was not accessible before without venture capital, I mean. But now that is possible. Like, and the factorial of no code, low code is going to get so many other innovative founders out where they have just given up on programming because they are lazy to write code, but have a good grasp on flows and logic building. They'd also get to work hands-on with their product.
Right, exactly. And with low code, no code, I still believe there is some sort of a path where when the complexity of the application is lower, the no code tools are perfect, and in fact, they're the best option. But at a certain point, if you were to graph it out and say, the complexity is increasing and increasing, and at a certain point, if you at that point that you continue using no-code tools, the complexity of building your application actually goes up with the no-code tools. It becomes far more complex because it is suited for general, simple kind of work. And at that point, you got to make a decision. Do you want to switch to code? Because it's getting too complex.
Isn't that is the opportunity we saw, and that was the reason why Flowpix even came into picture to deal with that same problem even I had. When we are designing software on no-code, low-code tools, the limitation of tooling is also a method, or is kind of a pseudo blessing, where the structure we design for our software, the entire system's algorithm or the entire system's architecture kind of becomes light in very own if we are using no code, low code. And I don't remember if you and me had a conversation on this before, but essentially to have a good intuitive sentiency in AI, we need to let the AI process code more than we process code for the AI. And that is something which no code, low code kind of fuels in a way, where without that, without no code, low code, I don't see sentiency happening in any sort of AI. Because till the time we get out of micromanaging every bug, micromanaging every flow of the system, sometimes the software knows better what to edit than we do, because like the errors are also pointed out by the software only, right? Like compiler only gives us a notification there's an error in your code, and that is when we debug.
Yep, exactly.
Most of the time.
Yep, and I don't disagree that as the tool sets start evolving, and even what you're building potentially could move that line further out, where you say, at what point do you think no code is not a best fit, or low code is not a best fit? But that line will constantly be moving. There's always a point where the performance and the optimization in the code and all that matter. And sometimes the no code may not necessarily be the most optimal way, the most performant way of doing things. And that's when, coders would be opting for code. But I'm not saying that is going to be forever. That line keeps moving. And as tool sets evolve, we're going to be seeing a situation where even more complex code could be done with, no code and low code. The optimization could be something that is done by AI, where, today, you have things like how can you process, for example, if I were to take an example of vision AI, computer vision, and being able to respond to things very quickly. And if I were to take a retail example where you are in a store, it's a grab and go store, and you were picking an item, putting it back, misplacing items and all of that, and a camera is picking up every move. It is matching it to you. You could be doing all kinds of variations, like you could be handing the product to somebody else, they could be handing it back, they could be putting it back. So the camera is responding to every move, and it is doing it at very fast pace. And sometimes, the optimization, the response rate at which it needs to react and figure out what's going on, what events are going on, it needs very optimal performance. And that's where, today, if that was built with a no-code system, it may not necessarily be very optimal and very small. The code needs to be, the size of the code, for example, the cost of processing on-prem, most of the retailers, they're looking for very low-cost hardware to run these models on. They're looking for very small
IoT
code.
there doesn't have to cost a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And they're looking for speed and low cost and size. And today, I would say we're not quite there yet for no code. Maybe we are, but that line is still moving.
If we're not there, we'll drive it there. We'll transform the way these things happen, right? Like
exactly.
From the last podcast, let's transform these methods also.
Exactly. And yeah, I totally believe that that line that I'm kind of talking about, where no code may not be the first choice for many developers, will keep moving. And the other aspect where I see the divide between code and no code is there are developers, if you're in an environment where, and no code is beautiful for situations where you're trying to build something with very little resources. You're trying to build something with almost no developer resources or data science resources. You can be productive. You can build a working system. On the other hand, if you have a developer, the developers in general would be more productive because they can build more efficient code and more quickly because they have the existing libraries and they can build more complex systems faster with code. So it really depends. And a lot of times, it is not a one size.
Time also. It actually saves time also. Like even if you're a developer and
right.
Honestly, like this is part of my new experiences I've had in the last year after the podcast, after starting Pikk and whatnot, where we have I've interviewed more than 100 developers myself personally. For internships, and like the 2 batches we had were awesome. But in that, the most basic thing I saw while hiring people was like when we are interviewing them, they have the knowledge and understanding about what is to be built if they are told what is to be built.
Right.
And if the model is properly defined on Scrum, and if they have proper instructions from the BRD document to build out that system the way it is.
Yep.
But
Yep.
initially, as a startup founder at this stage, we are looking for people where they can, like, we have a meeting on what is to be built, and they go figure out what is to be built and uh, come up with an architecture logically. So
Right.
in that, the thing which I was trying to look for was if the people who are applying knew how to draw
Mhm.
flowcharts.
Right. And that's a perfect example, because you're looking for, a new developer that may not have a massive amount of code that they've already built in the past. And when they see a problem, they can, right away in their head, they know how to do it with code. In those cases, it is a great accelerator. And I totally agree. And I kind of go back to the time where I used to write code for Excel. And Excel has got
Excel is the best no-code, low-code programming tool there is on the planet right
exactly.
now. My
So,
opinion,
yeah,
but yes.
yep. There's a VBA engine in Excel where you can write code to do automation and all that. And one of the really beautiful parts of Excel, at least this was more than 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago,
Oh,
where there was a recorder where you could do your actions in Excel, record the whole thing, and it would convert the recording to code. And then you could go into the code and learn how, whatever you did in
wow.
Excel could be done in code. And that was, at that time, for me, that was a learning tool. I could say, if I wanted to do this particular action in Excel, like I want to do a pivot table in Excel, or I want to transform a table in Excel, I can do it in Excel without code, but how do I do it in code? I record it. And when I record it, it generates the code. And I go, wow, that's how I do it. Now I know how to do it. So, and then I didn't really have to write the code, because the code wrote itself through the recording. And that was an awesome
That's
way
awesome.
of learning Excel and automating stuff in Excel.
And honestly, from what I have seen in how there is a buzz about a lot of tech, there is always, but the real application of that tech is very less. That is what we normally end up seeing.
Right.
In the similar way, the no-code, low-code ecosystem right now, from what you used to do 10 years ago, 15 years ago, writing a script on COBOL, I guess, or something close to that with Excel, was out of the world.
Right, exactly.
Even today, people don't know this was possible. Like, I remember sorting out programming problems where we have to write a very complex code for getting to a point we get those variables right entirely on Excel without having to write a script, where the data entry, which is programmed per block, how Excel is, come on, better than I do. I'm learning Excel even today. So every time there's a new feature I don't know about.
Yep.
So like when we program those cells on multiple functions from different math,
right,
that is so brilliant even today.
Exactly.
And that spreadsheet we build of we use Excel for, how do I say this? We don't utilize Excel well, as people who are new to programming or new to software building and delivering that to people. In that, what happens is that Excel sorts out the most data processing complex problem at the prototyping stage very easily. And we spend months of development resources just to figure the same math out.
Exactly. I mean, in Excel is potentially a good front end for a lot of, code that you do in the back end. One of those things, for example, it has the ability to pull data from external sources using APIs and all of that. Once you pull the data, doing interesting things with that data, like pulling out insights or creating a report or helping you make certain decisions through it. All of that can be automated. And that is a interesting aspect where, if you have an idea of, and I'll just make this up, like, for example, you are trying to buy a certain product and you're trying to do a comparison of those products on, in Excel, you could potentially just type in the names of the products. It could do a web search to use a code, pull the prices and features and all of that, create a table for you, and then, say, here is the comparisons, here's where one differs from the other. So all of those could be automated. You could do that, create a template for a specific category, and those kind of things can be automated, and Excel could be the front end for doing a lot of those things.
That is fine, but that front end, the problem there, it is not really a problem per se, but what happens is the Excel UI is very fascinating to people who love numbers.
Right, exactly. And
they love it. But the people who are not so good with numbers, what happens for them is they don't tend to get to Excel and get to the capabilities of Excel, where building a layer on top of Excel, putting Excel as a backend, like not just the front end to the backend, but the real backend to process all the information.
Exactly.
And have an intuitive UI on top of that is going to kind of be the, how do I say this? I sound stupid when I say these things, but
no, you're actually right, because I wouldn't recommend Excel actually for the end user. It is more of I would say a power choice, where you're saying if Excel is your comfort zone, you can build a lot of things onto Excel. But otherwise, I'd recommend sort of a Power Platform front end with forms and workflows and all of those, where it's a web interface or a mobile interface.
Precisely, like getting to that where we utilize both these capabilities of a platform to build out a platform which gets more people into programming.
Right, exactly.
Where the no-code, low-code ecosystem has the capability of getting my feeble-minded dad who cannot write 10 lines of code or even reply to emails sometimes because he doesn't have time from getting away from calls, can easily get those things done with a UI which is easier to use.
Exactly.
He's not learned to do anything other than switch on the computer and check emails.
Totally agree. Yep.
But that is 80% of the users we have today.
Exactly. The whole Office and Power Platform combined, in the back end, there's a lot of things where there's certain things that are suitable for Excel, and you're right, they could be done or automated in the back where the Excel capabilities could be used, but then the end user does not necessarily need to see it. Just like, there is a lot of the mapping capabilities, the geospatial capabilities, where I'm trying to, plan out something, and I'm trying to get a list of customers that are in a certain area. And there is a geospatial element to it to say, where, close to where, a 10-mile radius of somewhere. And I want to filter that out. To figure out 10-mile radius of a specific place, I need to have geospatial capabilities. I could call an API in the back end to connect to Azure Maps, Bing Maps, and say, filter out only the customers in this area. And that could be pulled in. And those kind of things could be all automated in the back end, where you don't know whether the API is being used. There could be certain APIs from Excel, there could be certain from Azure Maps, Bing Maps, all of those.
Of course. And see, don't get me wrong, you have to use Azure Maps, Bing Maps. I don't have to use them. I go for Google Maps as a user there. Because the ecosystem around Google Maps has a lot of feedback from the daily user, not just a user who's into tech or is a nerd for tech or has a certain amount of proactivity towards developing tech. But the people who are disconnected from tech also, there's a lot of feedback from that user.
Right.
See, that could be a different story. The entire Google Maps could be built on the back end using Azure or whatever it is. That is a mystery for everyone. But
Right.
let it be a mystery only in a way.
Well, most of the enterprises kind of shy away from Google mainly because, the data is being mined in whatever you do with Google Maps. So that's one of the reasons.
But isn't that the whole, like, that's the difference between a developer and a user, there where
Right.
those trade-offs are there for people who understand data to process it better than people who don't understand data. So
Exactly.
in a way, it
Exactly.
helps.
Mhm.
It's like having built a system on Excel where the feeble-minded programmer like me can program complex systems, but then Excel being the backend or the database altogether, where anyone can come and help me out with Excel, because
Right.
like where my accountant can help me, where my engineer can help me,
Mhm.
where many of my teams can work in collaboration
Right.
because the user interface for the data is what they are used to.
Right, exactly. And that's a great point because if the data collection, if you have users that are very familiar with Excel, want to be using Excel, and that's your means of gathering data, your application could just be, pulling all that data from Excel. There could be a lot of processes being done in Excel. Or automation being done in Excel, but your final app, which your end users are using, is not Excel. It's a web-based app. It's a mobile app using the Power Platform. Yeah.
So as a developer, where my actual finance expert can give inputs to building a fintech is going to be like this only.
Right. Exactly.
Where that finance expert doesn't have to be a star programmer.
Right. Exactly.
And that helps build better tools for users where we can actually solve some problems out and not create new development problems.
Exactly. Yeah, it is an interesting ecosystem, and I kind of think most people can build a lot of applications using the Power Platform, Excel capabilities. I know a lot of what we call citizen developers within companies. There are people that are eager to automate some of the processes. They're not developers, but they're seeing a lot of manual processes and many disjoint processes within the company that's taking up time, is not very efficient, is creating bottlenecks. They can actually, they are empowered to say, I can fix this problem. It is very tedious. It is time consuming. It's resource
Every
intensive.
time you don't need to go find the developer to go do these things for you. Then that's the best part of it. Where if there is some small changes to do in the Excel sheet, and I know as a person who's not so good with computers, I can also go do those changes on the Excel sheet because I know how to use a cell.
Exactly. Yeah, it empowers people to be, in a way, entrepreneurs within organizations that they're working. So on the one hand, I'm saying, as a startup founder, you can build a prototype very quickly. Your vision can become real right away. And on the other as well, people who are creating startups within a company, they're working in an enterprise, but they are, they kind of see inefficiencies within the company and they say, we can fix this. We can make it far more efficient. They have the tools to make it happen without being developers.
This, what would happen is a lot of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 college graduated population where they are not the first choice for the job because they did not have a privilege to go to a good uni.
Right.
But where what would happen is that is when we'd see that transformation in retail, which is kind of in a deficit today because of less tech involvement. What would happen is people who are very street smart and operationally perfect know how to use these small tools. They know how to use Google Drive. They know how to use entire Microsoft Office perfect. But these basic things help a lot to build an organization around it, around operations, around retail, around having real-time data entries to actually help with real-time live inventory, even if the
Exactly.
operator is manual or
Exactly.
whatnot. We see
Mm.
so many awesome things happening in retail now, just
Exactly.
because
Well,
once we fix that user interface.
exactly. Well, even in the past, setting up a marketplace. So if you want to go into retail, online retail in particular, it was not easy. It was very tedious. If if you're an entrepreneur, and if I just say, if you wanted to set up a online marketplace, you want to sell things, you would have to go into the whole process of building a website, figuring out how to commerce enable it, setting up a shopping cart and payments and all of those things, without being a tech developer or having a tech developer on board, it was impossible. Today, because of all the
It's
low-code,
brilliant.
no-code tools, you can in minutes.
Brilliant. I love it.
You can have your marketplace up and running. You don't have to be a developer. And as a result, you have, platforms, Shopify and others, where you can kind of go in and say, I want to set up a marketplace. I want to define what it looks like. I want to define that experience, and I want to upload my products on, all of those things, and make it available on a mobile device, whether it's an Apple or an Android, all of those things. Without being a developer, you can make it happen. You can build a social community around it without being a coder. You can enable social commerce without being a coder. So all of those things, I
Instagram,
think.
LinkedIn,
Exactly.
Facebook, these platforms have kind of semi-bridged all of this very easily now, where the ecosystem doesn't need to be one software platform. It can be across different platforms from where our user habit cycle lies. Like I could have customer service customer service conversations with a bot on Instagram, maybe, where that account is with a blue tick and I get automated bot replies very quickly, because I'm used to texting other people on Instagram, then finding a way to communicate with the bot on the website.
Exactly. I mean, there's amazing startups that I'm working with, like, for example, a company called Quick, QUIQ, which essentially, if you are on their website, on your website, where you're trying to buy something, and the AI in it will also notice things like your hesitation. You clicked on something, you're not clicking on purchase, it'll automatically, it'll actually pop up and say, do you need any help? Do you have any questions about the product? So there's this constant, it's paying attention to your online behavior. It is trying to detect what is happening. Are you concerned about something? Is there a reason why you're not buying it, but you're spending time on it? Maybe you're doing research, so it'll help you with the research to move you along and to conversion. So it actually increases the conversion rates and all of those things that you would normally need a human for. I think the AI capabilities, and also the AI capabilities of building bots like that without code, is an interesting, evolution, I would say, where in the past, to build intelligent bots that'll monitor your behavior, ask you whether you need help, and be able to respond to, the common things that you're looking for, everything from product comparison to pricing to, can this be shipped, all of those things, to move you forward in the pipe.
And there is this one small, how do I say this? Awareness deficit, where we still have to make the users realize that where there are some systems in place in software, there is no one there, no person sitting in the back end to go and every time approve your data and go through that data, where your personal data is in jeopardy.
Exactly.
But there's a processed algorithm or a bot already pre-trained to get those things done in a systematic workflow.
Exactly. And also, things like inventory, like, for example, in the past, if you are selling something, you don't know how popular it is, and suddenly, it suddenly became popular, you ran out of stock. And then all the other customers come in and they go, well, it's no longer, it's out of stock. But with predictive algorithms, constantly watching it, constantly looking at external data, looking at behavioral data, and doing
You also have a
predictive.
notification that you're going to run out of inventory, go fill it up.
Exactly, or auto replenish. So it'll automatically detect that you will be running out of inventory based on the predicted sales, and it'll auto replenish. It'll auto reorder it so that you have orders coming in, because there is a lag time that it is already calculated and says it takes 3 or 4 days or a week for it to be replenished. So it will calculate and say, well, it's going to be running out in 3 days, but the reorder time is 4 days. So we're going to be ordering it in time so that it's seamless. You're never out of stock. Or
that part of development is kind of seamless and awesome even today. But that is not the factorial of retail, which is missing or is kind of, how do I say this? People say brick and mortar and retail is dying because of online commerce. But there is this one small thing which we see after looking at the data, is that the online e-commerce is built around that brick and mortar, where the nature of the brick and mortar is changed. The products just don't come out of thin air. They have to come from some offline place only. Right? Like when we're buying something or something like that. But get to a point where the interfacing of retail on the sales and getting business aspect would kind of has that requirement or a need to fill, where a store owner who's not so optimistic towards having a good tech solution or doesn't have resources to implement one.
Right. Yeah.
Like the kiosk owner around which we try to build an ecosystem.
Exactly.
People like those can move their products out because they just get a message. I have to pack this and keep.
Right. Right. And you bring up a good point. Retailers today, at least the successful ones, have stopped seeing online and offline as two separate things. They are combined, and also for the brick and mortar retailers, it is a huge advantage, combining the two, where the offline is a lot of times it is the fulfillment center. It is the experience, where customers can engage with the brand, and it kind of goes seamlessly integrated with online. So it is a place where you do returns. It is a place where you can instantly pick up when you order something online.
Yes.
What's the quickest way to get it? You don't have to wait for a week for it to be shipped to you. You order it online, you pick it up right away, or it gets delivered in 15 minutes. And those kind of things.
But not just that, that would become so much more nicer, because the warehouses normally have people who don't understand anything about the product. They're just there to move boxes. But those warehouses turned into the retail store fulfillment center, which is a semi warehouse, has trained staff which can help you with the product also.
Right, exactly.
Even if the customer service is centralized from there.
Yeah, exactly. And technology enables that now, where you don't need to have, experts in every store. At one point, it started becoming a challenge where, customers were getting access to the internet, had the ability to research stuff, and they go into the store and they go, well, the store associate doesn't know anything. There was a very high level of dissatisfaction. And but with technology, that has been bridged or can be bridged, where you don't need to have experts in every product in every store. Technology can bridge it, where you could have centralized experts that are available, accessible to every store, and customers can access them through digital means in the physical location or online location. So, yeah.
Because what see, and in that what would happen is there's one more aspect as a business owner which we don't look at most of the time. When once this would happen, the retail hybrid fix of warehousing and retail, where
Right.
we make more out of the retail real estate which is there, once we get to a point where we are kind of empowering that,
Right.
what would happen is the product, normally there's this 1% which we consider as the wastage or the product breaking because the person who's handling the product did not know the fragility. The losses we incur as a company can get trimmed down because there is trained people and staff there who know the product well, or who have had who have kind of a passion around the product.
Exactly.
And those places where we see that, those retail locations are beautiful. Like you go to a vegetable vendor, the vegetable seller needs to know when the vegetables are getting stale, or where they need to get moved quicker, or
Yeah.
they need to get put on offer so that the perishable goods don't perish before they are utilized by someone.
Exactly. And, AI plays such a huge part in all of those, everything from smell sensors to vision sensors and all of those, and linked to dynamic pricing. So there's a workflow in there where it says, if it's this particular product is not sold in a day, it is going to lead to wastage.
Loss.
And loss. So having dynamic pricing play a part where the price drops based on that, it helps move those products and reduce the waste and loss. Absolutely. So those are very interesting use cases. I'm kind of curious, with 2 minutes left, what do you think are the direction in no code? I'm curious about your vision of where this is going. What would be the ideal dream situation for no code?
Honestly, our conversation where we discuss the most ideal situation for me, which I'd like to see as a no-code, low-code developer, would be, let's say you and me are discussing an idea. The call is recorded, minutes of the meetings, we have discussed the idea. We have natural language processing so freaking good where the software just get built after the meeting we have. Provided we have all the resources in the backend connected to fuel that.
I love that idea. So action items automatically generated, calendars generated, notes generated, and you have your personal assistant in a way. Because,
and not just that, that's the whole idea behind pikkc, where pikkc, like PIXIE version of pikkc, where it kind of combines with FlowPix and the picture system of pikkc, where we can fix flows as a developer using the picture platform. But the discussion platform we have on pickups would be like where it writes code based on the idea and derive what it is to actually build that idea from conversation.
Right, exactly. So you describe what you want, and that description is transcribed and codified.
Codex, like where we tell, I want a blue box there, which has a toggle button and whatnot. The instructions we give a developer can be given to a program.
Exactly.
And we can tweak it on flows based on how we need them, on how the flow should be, and the user interface to be built on voice.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful vision. I love that.
And we're trying to build that at Pikk software part. And the pickups offline ecosystem, we are building that small IoT camera inventory system where quick inventories can become on pickups at a kiosk.
Exactly. Super. I love that. With that, this has been a wonderful chat. We talked about a lot of things and shared ideas. So thank you very much.
It is always a delight to have you on the podcast. And for people who have missed out on Shish's introduction before, because I was kind of trying to be lazy there, where I wanted to say he's from series 1 and he's back on the podcast, and I did not want to get into a formal introduction. Shish is the global head for retail Microsoft for startups, right?
Yep. Yep.
So for them, that is Shish Shridhar for you.